We all know Elliot Ludwig created Playtime Co., but what if the toys weren't his only creation? Elliot Ludwig was the founder of Playtime Co., known as the toy maker of his time, bringing joy and wonder to children around the world. But beneath the legacy, hidden deep within his past, lies something far more sinister, a darkness that may have shaped everything he created. Hey everybody, I'm Jeeps, and today we'll be diving into who he is, the dark past of Elliot Ludwig, and his involvement with the history of Playtime Co. However, before we look into anything that may seem off, who is Elliot Ludwig? Elliot Ludwig, as we know, was the founder of Playtime Co. We don't know exactly when he was born, but it is speculated to be sometime around the early 1900s. Playtime Co. became responsible for creating some of the world's greatest toys, spreading happiness to many children around the world. Many of these toys would become more popular, like the Smiling Critters lineup, which sprayed relaxing scents, Huggy Wuggy, Mommy Longlegs, Doughy the Doughman, and many, many more. Much of these toys were created in the late 1900s, but went on to greatly improve Elliot's reputation during his career. Similarly, many actions from Playtime, like the creation of Playcare, which was an on-site orphanage, also greatly contributed to how many people thought of Elliot Ludwig. But as we play through the games, it's clear that at some point something went terribly wrong. In the 1990s, Elliot Ludwig passed away, which placed the company into the hands of the executives. Essentially people that I've mentioned before, like Pierre, Stella Greyber, Harley Sawyer, Eddie Ritterman, or the Warden, who was relatively new, which were all head of their own respective programs within the company, some more sinister than others. What's important about this is the people who were placed in charge. You see, Poppy Playtime has a large amount of lore you can uncover spanning across a variety of tapes found in the game, documents, and overall story. And after looking over quite a lot of this myself, I could say one thing for certain. Harley Sawyer, Pierre, and Eddie Ritterman, and maybe the Warden, were not good at all, especially for this company. These guys were a part of the sole reason that Playtime Co. started to spiral down into the pit of sinister intention and messed up experiments, and the lore we collect from the game confirms it. Starting with Harley Sawyer, sometime during the early 1990s, the Bigger Bodies Initiative was created. This matches up perfectly with Elliot Ludwig's death and explains why the initiative was greenlighted amongst the executives. If Elliot was alive, it most likely wouldn't have happened. And yes, Elliot did start the use of these experiments, but I'll get into that momentarily. Continuing, Pierre was the head of innovation, and also heavily participated in the Bigger Body Initiative's programs. This is confirmed from a tape we see of Catnap and Lath talking, and a multitude of other tapes where we could see Lath and the other executives speaking as well. But as time went on, due to repeated failures from the initiative and the executives wanting to control Harley Sawyer without killing him, Pierre proceeded to backstab and turn Harley Sawyer into a digital experimentation of his own, specifically the one that we see in Chapter 4 of the game. And finally, Eddie Ritterman, who was the head of research at Playtime Co. As far as I know from what I could find, Eddie is very reclusive and there's been little information on him up until Chapter 4. What we do know is that Eddie recruited the help of an organization named Warrenbach Construction to help create the laboratories for Playtime Co., and later the prison, alongside assisting in the cleanup of the theater incident resulting in Harley Sawyer's termination. As for the Warden, I couldn't really find anything big except for when he gave Harley Sawyer the Omni Hand during the Hour of Joy. There's probably some documents out there, but it's nothing that I could find so far, so we'll avoid him for now. Now you might be asking why this is all important. Why do we need to know these teeny tiny facts about these specific executives after Elliot's death? Well, it's simple. Because of their evil doings and actions, the company was led directly into the deep dark, leading to the horrific events that took place on August 8th, 1995, also known as the Hour of Joy. They led the company straight into that direction, resulting in many lives lost, and many terrible experiments along the way. The reason why I don't include Stella Greyber onto that list is because she genuinely cared about the well-being and care of the children at Playtime Co. Alongside this, she also started for morally good reasons, wanting to help the children, but it's uncertain as to why she contributed to its dark history. But in Chapter 4, we do find a tape showing a discussion between Pierre and Stella Greyber.
So, Miss Greyber, Have you considered what we talked about?
Yes, Mr. Pierre. I won't lie. I was at a loss for words at first. The information hit me pretty hard. I felt so badly. I still do. For the ones that go through the, testing.
You really care about them?
Yes. It hurts to see them hurt. I don't think there's any way around that feeling. But I did some soul searching and got to thinking about the bigger picture, about what your researchers wrote.
And?
Well, the work itself, what you've all been able to do, I mean, it's nothing short of a miracle. I know you have more goals to hit, but even as is, just, wow. Do they know when it'll be fully ready?
We're still working out the timeline.
I see.
You know, the project lead, Dr. Sawyer, wasn't sure about giving you that information in the first place. He thinks your affection towards those kids could be a liability. What do you think about that?
I took this job because I wanted to help change kids' lives for the better. Of course, these procedures are far from ideal. I cried like a baby when I read them. But I started looking past the here and now. Started looking down the road a bit. And that's when it clicked. What your researchers can do down here will someday help a lot of people out there. Including so many kids. That's a bigger and better change than I could ever have hoped to make. That's a change I want to help make.
I knew you'd understand.
Stella at some point was told the hard truth of the operation and what is occurring. It seems like she knew what was going on, but chose to continue her work, whether it was out of being deceived or possibly fear. But without a doubt, Stella Greyber's morality and care was way above the others. However, while these four individuals shaped the future of Playtime Co. into the darkness that it became, what actually sent Playtime Co. on its path to destruction? In order to answer that, we need to look at the reason why Elliot Ludwig started experimenting in the first place. In the early days of Elliot Ludwig's career, he was married to his wife Molly, and had a daughter. While the name of his daughter is unknown, we do know that Molly and Elliot divorced sometime around the 1930s, during the creation of Elliot's company, Playtime Co. This is suspected to be due to Elliot's strong work ethic, which led to the divorce. But that wasn't the turning point for Elliot Ludwig. Around the early 1960s, Elliot Ludwig's daughter passed away, pushing him to his lowest, something we learned from the Elliot Ludwig family VHS tape in his room in Chapter 2. This led him to question the aspects of life and death, and if someone could really be brought back, or so we believe. So Elliot Ludwig began experimenting, using rats and properties similar to poppy flowers. We see this from a document named Experiment 814, which you can yet again find in Elliot Ludwig's room, on his desk at the beginning of Chapter 2, next to the backstory VHS tape we just discussed. The experiment goes into detail about the rat and poppy gel, but the results tell us there wasn't any significant outcome. This led Elliot Ludwig to begin a special program giving opportunities for young brilliant minds around the world. This program was called Elliot Ludwig's Young Geniuses Program, which was created in order to further pursue the developments of science and, of course, find the fine line between life and death to further pursue Elliot Ludwig's goal. And of course, one of the many individuals a part of this program was Harley Sawyer. However, due to Sawyer's unethicalness and lack of humanity, he was removed by Elliot, which we further see in a letter sent to Harley Sawyer from Elliot Ludwig, removing him from the program. This letter is specifically important because it shows that Elliot wasn't a bad person and had moral intentions when it came to the company, alongside the people he worked with. I believe that the story of Poppy Playtime and all of the events that unfolded weren't the fault of Elliot Ludwig, but more rather the fault of Harley Sawyer, because even though Harley Sawyer was removed from the program, he managed to climb back up through the science division of Playtime Co., being placed as a secondary executive, later creating the Bigger Bodies Initiative after Ludwig's death, resulting in the downfall of the company. However, while Elliot Ludwig may have had a charming reputation amongst many Playtime consumers, fans, and other parties involved, it's what happens after his death that really brings up the question, did we really know the real Elliot Ludwig? You see, in Chapter 3 of Poppy Playtime, we find ourselves in Home Sweet Home, which was one of the many locations within Playtime Co.'s on-site orphanage called Playcare. Home Sweet Home was essentially the core and central facility where the orphans would sleep or be held. Now, from when you first enter on the car ride into Playcare, you can hear Elliot Ludwig giving a speech on the TV introducing the facility, his goals, and ideals. It's uncertain whether or not Elliot Ludwig was involved in the true intentions of Playcare, like experimenting on children, but one thing is absolute, Elliot Ludwig may not have been all innocent, especially with the experiments he started conducting. You see, sometime during Home Sweet Home, we find ourselves walking through the poppy gas that he created. This derived from poppy flowers in the game, which would put anyone who inhaled it to sleep, giving them great nightmares or illusions. Essentially, the halls start repeating, and a faint radio can be heard stating the following.
Tragic news this morning. As of 9:45 a.m., local authorities report that the body of a young boy has been found on the estate of the late Elliot Ludwig, an esteemed toy maker and originator of the Playtime Company. At this time, an identity for the child awaits official confirmation. Found in an upstairs bedroom in a large duffel bag, officers on scene report that the remains appear to have been disturbed. Organs, as well as key bones from the skeletal structure, were reported missing from the body. Following recent events, Playtime Co. was asked for any comment regarding the discovery. This is what they had to say. Quote, "It's sickening. Elliot Ludwig was a great man, and those who knew him understood that he was not capable of violence."
Now, we've gone through this a lot in the past, but this area of the game just gives so much lore, it is crucial. It's very important. We are told Elliot Ludwig has passed through a variety of radios found within Home Sweet Home. But more specifically, the news broadcast states that a discovery of an eviscerated child was made in Elliot Ludwig's home. Eviscerated meaning here the removal of internal organs, which is really, really gruesome. Didn't want to type that, but here we are. This brings into question what Elliot Ludwig's involvements with the experimentation were, and how far he was willing to go to try and bring back his beloved daughter, despite losing morality and, obviously, humanity. This also ties into Elliot Ludwig's apparent behavior before his death and him returning home late. But it's really hard for me to believe that he would do such a thing, as Elliot even removed Harley Sawyer for that exact reason: humanity. Anyways, Playtime Co. does its best to defend Ludwig, taking place after his death, and that's that. And while Harley Sawyer was a huge reason behind the downfall of Playtime Co., he wasn't actually the root problem. Once Elliot passed away in the late 80s to early 90s, Leith Pierre was put in charge as CEO and actually offered an invitation to Harley Sawyer, which ultimately led to the scenarios we see in the lore and the dark backstory. So yeah, Elliot Ludwig was definitely involved in some shady business, and he didn't have the brightest past, but he was a man leaving his legacy to help improve the lives of children. But unfortunately, the people left to carry on that legacy turned it into something much worse. The story of this game is so vast, and if you're curious to dive deeper, just check out this video right here. I'm Jeeps, and trust me, you don't want to miss it.